if you have any interest in the nuances of caffeine and CSF leaks, I'm trying to geek out on that. So I'm going to share what I'm learning as I'm learning it. Kind of my plan anyway. So far this morning, I have had like half of a Dr. Pepper. Prefer the zero over the diet, but that's what I could get in a bottle. I find I get more immediate relief with this, but I didn't want to just do my evaluation based off of individual personal experiences. I also wanted to ask ChatGPT some things, and so that, of course, is like, domino effect. You can't ask one question without getting to another and another. And I like that because I'm enough of a geek nerd to have tolerance for that. But I don't have a medical background. I have been getting a forced medical background over the past decade of learning about my illnesses, helped me to kind of refine my pursuits of taking care of myself. And so I've learned a lot, but I was the person who resisted going into medicine whenever it came time to choose colleges and stuff. So keep all that in mind. I'm not trying to say that what is working for me will work for you, or that that this is full description of how caffeine works or CSF leaks work and POTS. One of the things that led me to trying to dive in deeper, and I may have to do several videos, and I'll try to post them together, and I'll keep these, and maybe one day when I have the ability, the more of a bandwidth to set up and do stuff, I will maybe put it into a YouTube video. So if you've seen this on a Facebook post, look for other videos if this one gets interrupted, because I am expecting a phone call. I'm setting up. I'm not lying down. I wanted y'all to see that I am doing better than I was in my last few videos that I put up last week. That plane ride to Ohio to see the Dr. Vero Janapa up there, it just beat up my brain, and it was just all kinds of brain fatigue, brain fog. It was rough, but I think as of Friday afternoon, I started to feel better. And then certainly Saturday, I was thinking, okay, is this just the caffeine, or am I just sharper? So, but yesterday I felt like even without the caffeine, I would have assessed myself as being over the damage done by that plane ride. Just don't want to go on a plane again until I know that I can keep the pressures in my head. I don't want to say equalize, but before I need to have some realistic way to assess how the cabin pressures inside of a plane are going to impact my brain before I get on a plane again. That can't be healthy. That's got to be on the same level as concussion. And I've had some concussions from spinal fluid leaks from my tethered cord surgeries. When they were detethered, the surgeon opens up the canal and you lose fluid. So you get low fluid, and it depends on how long that canal has to be open too. This last one, it was open for a long time, and that was 2.5 years ago now. And the concussion after that was on the way home, from on the way to the hotel afterwards, and that was just so painful. So they say it's not a good thing to have a concussion or repeat concussions. So no more plane rides. So going back to caffeine, I started noticing that I was having a change in my POTS symptoms. Like I was needing to take, I don't have it here handy, but I was needing to take my mitidrone, or midodrine is how I pronounce it. It's a medicine I take for my POTS. It constricts blood vessels, and it keeps blood up in my head so I don't pass out when I'm upright. And because I have POTS, is partly why the CSF leak was harder for me to kind of fine tune that that's what was going on. It's not the only thing that was confusing the symptoms, but that was part of it. So I started thinking that, okay, if I'm having to take my Midodrine less, or less of it and less often, and sometimes knowing it's not even in my system, what is this caffeine doing for me? Um, did I ever need my POTS medicine? If all I needed was a bunch of caffeine, was my POTS a misdiagnosis and it's just maybe I had a CSF leak this whole time? It's just all kinds of questions hit. Some of those things you'll never really know, but I do expect whenever I have the vascular compression that's going on in this area fixed, I might have a profound improvement of my POTS. That would be great. And if I get this tinnitus in this ear gone, I'm telling you, I am going to be ready to take over the world. I'm kidding, because there's still lots of other stuff going on. And I do know that I'm fragile and I can't start overcommitting as soon as I get any kind of improvement to where I feel like I'm going to consistently feel better. The trick when you have a fragile body that is hypersensitive is to maintain that stage of equilibrium, where your body is kind of working, for your benefit and not against you. That's something you want to protect. So now I'm working on my green tea. I get one from, is it Bigelow? Is that how you pronounce it? It's with pomegranate. And so when I did my analysis, this is a caffeine, do you see that? Caffeine delivery, what does it say? Caffeine delivery forms and effects on CSF leak symptoms. So ChatGPT and I have become close friends. So it came up with this for me. And it's really quite nice. I'll try to put a picture of this in the Facebook post. But hot coffee can deliver the quickest. Hot tea, not much behind that. Then there's cold coffee, and then there's cold tea, and then Coke Zero, and Dr. Pepper Zero, and then a caffeine pill. So I used to do hot coffee, and then in the last few years, since my last detethering, I couldn't do a hot drink in the morning without it making my POTS worse, because a hot drink is actually opening up your blood vessels, and my Midodrine was closing of those blood vessels to keep blood in my head. And I thought, well, shouldn't I need more of the Midodrine if I'm trying to keep the CSF fluid up in my head? And how is caffeine working to improve the pressure in my head, to increase the pressure? Because my leak was supposedly somewhere in the spine, which I believe is in the low spine, that was allowing the pressures in my head to be too low. So the brain's losing its buoyancy, if you will. And so you get a lot of nerve strain. And I'm telling you, I could look like a mad woman. I can just pull on my hair and push and pull. And you become unsightly really quickly, because the pain is just relentless. And it's like every nerve going on around your head, under the skin, on the skin, is on fire. You feel like your head is on fire. So something you really want to correct, because it's very unpleasant, and being upright is a problem. But I've had my caffeine here, I've had my Midodrine, and I'm working on this tea. So I'm trying to do a major dosing in the morning, and then trying not to have anything past 12:01 so I can still sleep. Right now, that's still possible. If I stop at that 12:01 with the caffeine, I can taper off and sleep at night. I don't think it's as good of a sleep as I was getting. Because I'm telling you, one nice thing, in a way, after that trip to Ohio, I was sleeping 9 hours. And if the dog had not needed me to get up and take her downstairs, I would have slept more. That's another telltale sign that my brain was in recovery mode. Anyway, let's go back to this, because there's like 3 sheets here. One led to the other, to the other, to the other. So if you have anything going on, let me just be an advocate for this. If you have anything going on with your body, I highly, highly recommend geeking out as much as you're capable. Not everybody has a capacity for it. Some can just be really hyper nerd, right? And that's a beautiful thing whenever it comes to figuring out your own health, because you have to be. It's easy to get caught into rabbit trails of self-belief about, oh, this causes that, that causes this. Because like, for instance, I gained 3 pounds in the last 3 days. There's no way I ate enough food to gain 3 pounds. So I could look at that and say, oh, I gotta change my diet or something along those lines. And then, but no, you gotta step back and ask more questions. You know, asking questions is what I'm trying to be an advocate for. You can't have a rare illness, multiple rare illnesses without asking the detailed questions. It's the only way you're going to get help. It's the only way I've gotten help to this point. So you have to ask those questions. So I lost my train of thought. I apologize. This is real life, guys. The brain fog is real. When you have a lot of pain going on, you have a lot of dysfunctions going on. Let me just backtrack to where I was before I went off into that tangent. So I started looking at my tea or my coffee. You know, my coffee I gave up doing because it was making me, I gave up doing it as a hot drink. And I would make it and put it in mason jars so it'd be cold. And so, you know, all the months of the year, whether it's winter or not, I would drink it cold. And then I started worrying about the mold in coffee. First I started worrying about my coffee pot, like the tubing having mold in it. And then I thought, well, I did my pour over coffee, which I love that. It's much cleaner taste. And then I realized that coffee in general has a higher mold content. So I thought, well, let's just take that out of the equation. Let's just do tea. So there's been a process of learning about what different forms of caffeine will do to me, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, whether it's coffee, whether it's tea. And now that I'm adding, and I'd gotten off caffeine altogether because I thought, well, I don't even need this. My electrolyte drink in the morning is really all I really need. And it was, and it is, except for my CSF leak. So part of the issues that I have going on is a lot of tension in this area. So I can slur my speech and I can get a little gravelly. I'm hoping that whenever I get these vascular compressions taken care of and things identified, that gets corrected. So just bear with me as I get tongue-tied, as I try to talk too fast, faster than what my muscles can keep up with. So where was I? Back to this. So I've been exploring the different forms of getting caffeine and then not doing caffeine. But I am definitely, like, I can't get up off the sofa without a lot of pain without caffeine. With caffeine and a compression belts on multiple, like I have one low. I'm using two. I have one that covers the whole area, but it doesn't put enough pressure on the sacrum. So I have one for the sacrum and then one on the middle area. So going to the restroom is like, you know, a process because you got to take all that off. And it's noisy. You can't do it in secret. You got Velcro, big straps of Velcro. So I've been exploring all these different types of caffeine delivery over time. So it's not a new thing. But now that I'm adding carbonation, I threw that into the mix on this graph. And I said, chat, show me my graph and tell me what's what. And at the very bottom, I noticed this morning, avoid excessive carbonation or dehydration, which can worsen intracranial pressure symptoms. I'm like, really? Really? Okay, so one of the first things I learned was that Dr. Pepper has more sodium in it than Coke Zero. So that's why Dr. Pepper performs differently than Coke Zero. Dr. Pepper is mild in its strength, which is nice. I don't really want tons of caffeine all at one time. I want just enough. I don't want to overdo it because I have chronic fatigue syndrome. If my adrenals get overly stressed for a period of time, they're going to wreak havoc on me. And I don't want that again, because I'm telling you, whenever you have a chronic fatigue crash, it's not fun. It looks a lot like what you saw last week on the videos, but a lot worse. And it can take a long time to get out of those crashes. It took me about 3 years last time, almost 4. Where was I here? So I had noticed that this had more sodium, so I thought, well, maybe that's partly why my POTS symptoms were performing better, because electrolytes are very important. Sodium is very important for keeping your blood volume up, and that helps you to have more blood inside your skull so you can keep your brain functioning and you don't pass out. Because with POTS, you have a blood volume drop from the skull, and the brain says no thank you, and it turns off and you pass out. So to counter that, it'll say, okay, heart, pump harder to keep blood up, and so you get a lot of tachycardia. So I thought maybe that's why my POTS symptoms were changing, or at least responding differently to what I was doing. And then, of course, I had this chart done, and I see that it says avoid excessive carbonation, because I was thinking, okay, I've gained 3 pounds. It is not from overeating. There's just no way it is. So it has to be water weight. Also didn't gain 3 pounds in muscle because y'all saw me on the couch last week. So you start asking, and you find any little seed like that about carbonation and think, well, that's one of the changes I've put in, is I've put in carbonation. And what is that going to do to me? So I asked ChatGPT about that. Let me take a sip of my caffeine. It doesn't do me any good in my hand. I do worry about drinking it hot because of what I said before, because a hot drink will open up your vessels, and I'm needing to constrict my vessels. One of the things before I go on, I want to say that I did learn that what caffeine does for constricting vessels is primarily in the brain, which is why Excedrin has caffeine in it, and aspirin and Tylenol, I think. But it's primarily working on the vessels that are inside your skull. Whereas my midodrine, I think midodrine is proper, but I'm used to saying it midodrine. With midodrine, it is a systemic constriction of your blood vessels. Again, you gotta ask the questions. You know, you gotta dig deep, and ChatGPT is very helpful for that. And again, it's really easy to like pigeonhole yourself down a pathway without it being the right one. You gotta keep your questions broad. Just because it looks like the path of your answers is getting yes, 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 yes. ChatGPT is very good at making you feel, no, that's not right. ChatGPT is very good at responding to what you're asking. So you have to ask it broader questions to keep it thinking broadly. Otherwise, it's just kind of mirroring you. So you got to be careful of that. As I'm sitting here advocating for you to be asking questions and pointing to chat as a resource for that. 17 minutes here, so maybe I can sum things up and then get you to looking for this information yourself. Because I'm getting kind of lightheaded. We may have to change this over to the sofa. Carbonation impacts intracranial pressure and CSF leak and venous congestion. So yeah, I think I will end this video and then start up after I've had a little bit of time to recuperate. But I'll put them all up on Facebook at one time, so as one post. So let me do that because I need to recuperate.